Today I'll be doing a video on the far right. The far right is very interesting. There are different branches to it. There's rational thinking on the far right. They're correct on a variety of things. For example, the far right is correct when it says that things like gender transition are nonsense. God made humanity male and female. The far right's right when it condemns things like transgenderism, bisexuality. The problem with the far right is that they can be very mean, hateful to people which fall under those categories. Let's go to the far right. The far right affirms truths of reality. Just the way the far right relates to other people. LGBT people. Some people on the far right there's an obsession. Technology. Transhumanism. Cyborgs. Colonization of outer space. Search for extraterrestrial life forms. White Imperium. And of course, there are black people which are far right. Well, that's a deviation from the general rule. Far right, generally white people. Hispanics perhaps, Asians. So the obsession with technology, it's something I don't like in the far right, because I think that there's things to learn from other races, other people. White imperium would spoil that. And when considered under the view of biblical worldview, it doesn't make much sense. Biblical worldview is the most accurate. In the biblical worldview, white imperium, it doesn't fit with scripture. God redeems people from all different tongues and kindred nations. From the biblical worldview, this world is a glimpse into eternity. The white imperium on the earth doesn't matter that much. Neither does colonization, expansion, exploration of space, expansion of human civilizations and out of space, search for extraterrestrial life forms. It doesn't matter much under the biblical worldview. It's just God, humanity, celestial beings, disembodied spirits. There isn't any extraterrestrial life which is outside of what's described in the Bible. God didn't create any green-faced aliens. So the branch of the far right, where there's this obsession over technology, I don't like it. The extraterrestrial life doesn't fit in with the biblical worldview, the search of it. There's no point trying to search for extraterrestrial life. Because all that was created, humanity, different things in the animal kingdom, celestial beings, disembodied spirits, that's all there is. There isn't any point to the exploration of outer space and search for extraterrestrial life forms. There's no ultimate point to landing different planets and study up civilizations on those planets. Human life flourishes on planet Earth. Not on Mars. Cyborgs and transhumanism, there's no real point to it from the biblical worldview. There's no point to the White Imperium. So that branch of the far right, I don't like it. I don't see the point. There's the other branch of the far right, where there's simple societies, people which get along, have meaningful relationships, closely knit communities, churches, kindred spirit. There isn't any lofty ideas, which are unrealistic. White Imperium being an example. It's just happy people which enjoy each other's company. Of course, it could be an idealistic view. But it's a nice view. You're simple people which love tradition. Which don't like all the progress, all the people which say that, oh, it's wrong to be opposed to the lifestyle of LGBT people. And there's nothing wrong with being opposed to their lifestyle. Lifestyle is an abomination. There's nothing wrong with people on the far right wanting a society where there isn't a lot of change. where there isn't any worry of the implications of immigration from the developing world. The far right is correct in being worried about high degrees of immigration from the developing world. The far right's correct in being worried about what's being taught in universities. Not liking Antifa and their activities. Anti-fascist movement. The far left cannot be considered liberal. The far right wouldn't consider the left liberal. The far right understands that liberalism meant that people had a lot of liberty. The state didn't interfere much in the life of the people. A capitalist model where people got paid proportional to the quality of the labour. The far left is against that. The far left is all about depriving people of rights, having the state excessively involved in the life of the people. The far left wants the state to be like a god. So the far right, there's plenty of rational thinking, plenty of concerns which are valid. Where societies are going. what's being taught in universities. Having reservations about the implications of high degrees of migration of persons in the developed world from the developing world, being worried about the implications. The far right could be open to the idea that there are some potential benefits of the settlement of persons in countries like America. I can remember hearing that Hispanics could make a lot of valuable contributions to the economy in America. That there are a lot of people which aren't willing to do menial labour. And that the Hispanics would take that on. Because the Hispanics have this idea of the American dream. That living in America itself is a privilege. Something to be very grateful for. And that simply because of that fact, the Hispanics will be willing to take on all the menial jobs which white Americans apparently aren't willing to take on. So, the far right could be open to the idea that perhaps in America the Hispanic population could be beneficial. Of course, I remember checking out plenty of statistics on the American economy. What I remember is that people saying that all this money was put into government policy to help out the Hispanics. But all the government money, all the taxpayer money put into government policy to help out the Hispanics, that it's actually leading to more debt. that America is increasing in debt as the population of the Hispanics increases through illegal migration. I can remember Jason Ripwine. He had a lot of interesting things to say about immigration from the developing world and Hispanic populations and economic policy in America. From what I recall, he basically concluded that America would be much better off economically if the economic policy in the 1920s continued. That the increase in government power increased involvement of the state in the lives of the citizens, and all the subsidies and taxpayer money put into policies that actually had negative implications on the economy. As did the migration of Hispanics into America. I'm not sure. I think that Jason Richwine might be correct. Things would be better if things continued as they did in the 1920s in America. I think that there's a lot of bias in the humanities, in the universities, colleges in America, that peer review journals may not be that reliable. That only peer-reviewed journals which push a certain idea are permitted to fall under the peer-reviewed journals. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. of people on the far left who try to vehemently oppose the idea that there aren't differences in the races. They try to say that all the inequalities and IQ results between the races, that it all comes down to environment. I don't think so. Certain IQ tests, sure, environmental variables could mean that some races perform better on account of environment. But those are IQ tests which have low G value. Some of them might have a G value of 40. Because there's a verbal component and the degree to which someone can perform very well in that verbal component can go back to the environment. Whereas the IQ tests which are very high in the G value, it's all based on patterns, choosing the correct things. Language and verbal reasoning doesn't go into it. It solely comes down to the fluid intelligence of the person doing the IQ test. There isn't any crystallized intelligence which leads to high performance. There are plenty of racial studies. Minnesota transracial study. People on the far left don't seem to give serious consideration to it. They just seem to be obsessed with the idea that all the inequalities in the performance and IQ tests comes down to environmental variables. When it doesn't, there are plenty of racial studies which, if taken seriously, should lead any person which is rational to believe that there are differences in the IQ scores between the races. So the far left isn't doing itself any favours. When it opposes the idea that there are inequalities in IQ between the races and that IQ is a very good predictor of how well someone will perform in a developed country. In the developing world, someone could do fine with a IQ lower than your average white person. The far left will be very destructive on American society if they succeed in their endeavours. America would probably collapse if there was too much migration from the developing world. It would be much like the fall of the Roman Empire. I can remember the fall of the Roman Empire. Lots of people began to migrate into the Roman Empire. And they weren't very familiar with the kind of expectations they would have as Roman citizens, well, citizens of Rome. I think there's truth that the genetics which led to the creation and expansion of the Roman Empire, there is a unique genetics. Some tribes are very primitive, and they would never have the capacity to create something like the Roman Empire. I think that there's truth to the idea that the genetics which gave rise to the rise of the Roman Empire, that if those genetics are replaced with the genetics of another population, that the Roman Empire simply wouldn't be the Roman Empire anymore, that it would be something else. The Roman Empire had a very slow and pernicious collapse. It was very gradual. And I think that something similar would happen with America. If there were high degrees of migration from the developing world, and if the far left, had their way. I think the far left in America, I think that they're very hostile. I think that they see themselves in a position of having a domineering place in society. That they think that they have a high capacity to have their will done. And if God permits the far left, they probably will succeed in having America destroyed. But I don't think God will let that happen. I think it's in God's will for America to improve. For a collapse to be prevented. When it comes to economics, the far right is very interesting. Some parts of the far right, they probably think that some state involvement in the economy is a good thing. I think it goes back to Nazi Germany. The bit of state involvement in the economy was very beneficial to the German economy. It wasn't to the extent that the state had ownership over the means of production. And people saw the state as like a god, saw the state as the one which provided the people with everything. People still got what was due for their labour. It wasn't like communism where there's a worship of the state. The person swears fealty, fidelity to the state, and has it like a god, and works with the sole intention of furthering the society and helping the state. And because in that economy, in that economic system of communism, not that many people. It takes a lot of worship of the state for people to really devote their lives to the state. Pictures have to be put up in the house of communist leaders, Joseph Stalin, for example. Code of personality of individuals like Joseph Stalin. Nazi Germany. The state involvement in the economy isn't so excessive. It's just a bit of help. There's entrepreneurship. The economy can improve immensely. People still get what is due for their labour, unlike in the communist economic system, where everyone receives about the same pay, regardless of the occupation. Well, of course, there's another part of the far right where there's probably classical liberalism, where there's pretty much no state involvement in the economy, and there's a class of people with higher than average fluid intelligence, which create the means of production, get lots of manufacturing going, and create lots of jobs. Classical liberalism is fine, but I think that the economic system of the Nazis, I think that was pretty good. I think it's pretty successful, the economic system. I think the far right would benefit if it started opening itself to the idea that the biblical worldview is the most accurate. The far right has a lot less to worry about. The far right can know that one day all the unrepentant homosexuals, bisexuals, transgender people, one day they'll get their just desserts. The Son of Man sends forth his angels, and gathers together all things which offend, and them which worketh iniquity, cast them into a furnace of fire. Of course, that isn't any excuse for the far right to be mean to people which fall under one of the categories of LGBT. I think the far right needs to understand that it's best to be friendly toward people which fall under the category, one of the categories of the LGBT community. I think the far right needs to understand that God probably sympathizes with them a lot more than the far left. So from my understanding, the far right affirm a lot of truths which God likes. He made humanity male and female. Sexual deviancy is an abomination. Stability in a nation is probably maintained with low degrees of migration from the developed world into the developing world. I think that the far right should be glad that they agree with God on a variety of things. If American society collapses and the far right are attacked by Antifa, I think that it'll be the far right which has God's sympathy. I think God abhors Antifa. I think he really wants them to repent. I think that God is very much in agreement with me that Antifa would be better if it ended, if it was closed down, if it was destroyed. God sees that Antifa is a very destructive force in American society. I don't think that God would let American society collapse and the far left and Antifa to have their way.